أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I don't know how many of you realize that we are living in an epidemic of mental illness. It's a fact. If you speak to any medic, any professional, any health administrator or health policy expert, they'll tell you that the Western world is living through an epidemic of mental illness. People can't cope. And the end result is what you see around you. Mental illness is not just about the mental asylums that are packed or full to capacity. It's also about people going for illegal substances, for over-medicating themselves with, numbing agents. It's also suicide. It's also violence, family violence. There's a lot of ways in which the mental illness that is at an epidemic level, that it is manifested. And alcohol abuse also. And I heard the other day, two guys were talking, and they were both, they liked drinking. They were talking about drinking, and I for the first time heard this saying that, I drink because it takes off the edge. And I tried to make sense of what does it mean by it takes off the edge, being someone that has never, consumed alcohol. So I started thinking about what does it mean to take off the edge. And I thought to myself, if I look around me, if you look, at the internet, or if you just look in society around you, you'll see that there's a lot of people are pushed to the limits in terms of the strain that they can take. So in the level of fury or anger that people are experiencing, when you look at some people, you can just see that they can't contain the anger. And the type of abuse, the type of fury that you see coming out of people, but then also emotionally, the type of sadness, the type of lows that people experience for being disappointed or for being abandoned. The type of pleasure and happiness also that people experience is like they go over the top. And so I started thinking that maybe it takes off the edge means that it numbs the extreme of your anger, or the extreme point of your sadness, where it makes it survivable or livable or bearable. And that is how I then thought that what they mean by drinking booze or by taking a drink, it takes off that edge. It makes the sadness not that bad, or it makes the anger not that bad, or it makes the frustration not that bad, and it just emotionally brings them to a point of where it's bearable. And I thought to myself, well, it's a fair point, because when I look at the Muslims, then I often see them as the non-drinkers of the world, mostly, not exclusively so, but most Muslims that I know don't really get drunk. So I think not just most, like 90%, 95%, maybe more. So I thought to myself, maybe, it's a problem, the fact that Muslims don't drink. Maybe that's why they are often over the top when it comes to anger, when it comes to emotional despair, etc. But then I realized, you see, we have an instrument. I have an instrument, and maybe I can share my experience with you. There's an instrument called Taqwa, or conscientiousness, or being conscious of God. That really is a device for people who are who admit to the existence of a supreme being, of a benevolent, kind, merciful, supreme being. All those who admit or embrace the existence of such a supreme creative force and being with benevolence in the universe actually has a ready-made device with which to take the edge off. And let me talk to you about my experience. You see, because I've had times when I've had extreme emotional disappointment, extreme anger, and I've gone over the top maybe once or twice. I in terms of just feeling out of control. That has happened. I must say, not very often, but it might have happened. I think it happened, and then there were also times when I have actually wrested control over those emotions, whether it's anger, whether it is emotional despair, sadness. I have actually, there were times when I could actually control that. And the mechanism that I felt was always the best mechanism was that idea of taqwa, of regaining consciousness that there is a supreme being that is in control, that is aware of the circumstances, that is aware of every event, every development in the entire universe. That is how powerful that being is, because God says that He's aware of the smallest change in the universe. His knowledge encompasses up to the smallest, minutest development and entity or creation in the universe is not outside of His awareness. And so He is definitely that comfort that I then felt of Him being aware of my suffering, being aware of my anger, being aware of my disappointment. That it almost, it takes the edge off. That's exactly what it does. It takes the edge off. It allows me to, just before I reached breaking point, to realize, but maybe I should just sit back. Maybe I should leave it into the hands of God, in the hands of Allah, of my Creator. And I can't tell you how often, more often, probably all my life, it has prevented me from hitting a point of such big despair that it affects my mental well-being. And that is really what happens. You mother looking after a child in a home where there's a nasty, unhelpful, or even a cruel husband, and you just see no way out of that life. You just see no way that you can ever live like this or cope like this. I think the point I'm trying to make is that we have the device called taqwa. Taqwa comes from the word woe, qaf, ya, right? Woe, qaf, ya. And waqa. And the idea of taqwa, it comes from the word waqaf, yeah, and the meaning, it's actually waqaf alif. It's the ya without the dots. So waqa is the root word, right? And it means to guard, or to keep safe, or to protect. And the word arises in the Qur'an on so many occasions. In fact, it arises right at the beginning, right there up front. If you look at chapter 2, verse 2, that is like 7-8 verses into the Quran. It says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. There the word arises. Such then is the written code, free of ambiguity, a source of guidance for the conscientious. And when we speak about conscientiousness, we speak about that consciousness of Allah, the consciousness that there is a God, that it is within His control. Even if it is not within your control, it is within His control. And because He is benevolent, you don't have to lose it. You don't have to go over the top. And you don't need alcohol, therefore, to nurse yourself or to get yourself out of your deepest despair or your deepest sorrow or your deepest anger and frustration. All you need is to, at the point where you've done everything. And as a rational person, I also say that you have to do everything within your power to solve your problem. Whether it's a financial problem, whether it's a social problem, whether it's a personal problem, you have to do all you can. So if you're a woman stuck in a marriage with a cruel and indifferent man, you need to solve the problem in terms of how the Quran prescribes. You need to get mediation in there. You need to get counseling in there. You need to get his family involved there. If all of these fail, then you need to put your faith in Allah and God, and you need to pack bags and get the hell out of there if you've tried everything. And I'm saying this because we can't just also trust in Allah. You see, the problem with the Muslim world is they trust in God. They have their taqwa, but they don't make the effort. What I'm saying here to you is that you must have the taqwa, you must make all the effort, and then you leave it in God's hands. And that is how we also address our own mental well-being. We keep our composure, whether it is anger, disappointment, sadness, whatever. I don't know, I've had family that have lost my dear loved sister who has lost a child, and I can't think of anything more emotionally distressing and painful than to lose your young man who's your child, a man who's facing his future. And I must say, observing her strength, and it wasn't always possible for she wasn't always able to manage it, and it was difficult, I'm sure, but she came out with her spiritual, mental, physical well-being intact, because I believe that the taqwa, that conscientiousness, that consciousness of God was what carried her through this most traumatizing and distressing event. And so taqwa is a very core, essential element of humanity. It allows us to cope, and it allows us to temper, to restrain, to guard ourselves against going over the top. And alcohol is it's a temporary relief. It doesn't really solve your problem. It just defers the problem, and it puts you in this vicious spiral downwards, where you have to go use more alcohol. To become closer to God, closer to Allah, does not remove you from the reality of the world. It makes you a better person. In fact, you don't need to get more treatment because of abusing the medication. The medication solves the problem.